Welcome to Pulp Mythos. I'm Brian here with Larry and Spencer, and we're going to be discussing the WandaVision season finale called the series finale. If you've not hit the sub button, please do so. Hit that thumbs up. Leave a comment. We'll be covering Falcon and Winter Soldier, which I believe starts either next week or the week after, but we will be covering it, so check that out. We're gonna start this one a little different than we typically do. Since it's a finale, I'm just gonna go into what I liked, what I didn't like, and then you guys go from there and you tell me what you liked and didn't like. I'm pretty sure we'll cover most of the main points doing that, and if we don't, we'll circle back. But basically, I thought the episode was good, not great. When it came to the character stuff, the love story, things like that, I thought it was phenomenal. I thought the performances were great. I loved the deep dive into her relationship, the idea of her trauma. I loved all that. What I did not like was the comic book stuff. We went right back to what the MCU does poorly, in my opinion, playing it safe. You know, they went through the classic checklist that the MCU does a lot of times. And yes, look, their stuff's entertaining, but at times I wish you would take a few more risks. You essentially have you're fighting a version of yourself. That's something that they keep doing that irritates the hell out of me. Vision fights Vision. A witch fights a witch. That bugged me. All the fake outs. I'm not completely upset about that. I know a lot of people online are. No, we didn't get a Doctor Strange or an Ultron or a Nightmare or a Mephisto. Okay, fine. But my problem with it was the fact that we boiled down the plot line to Hayward just basically wanted a weapon, and Agatha just wanted power. There was no real depth or analyzing of why. We just sort of have to assume. That's a problem I have. And then my final problem, and then I'll throw it to you guys, Ralph Boner. Like, really? Like, yeah, right. You set up something that was a big deal potentially, but it's sort of a fake out, and you made it a little comedy bit. What was the point? I don't really know why you would cast him to do that if you're not going to tie this into the music. Now, maybe, like everything I complained about, maybe they'll answer later. Maybe there is more important things to it. But as it stands, as what we were shown in that, 30 minutes, 40 minutes of entertainment, that's what we were left with. So when it came to that stuff, for me, it went right. I just didn't care. I did like the character stuff. I think the legacy of the show is solid. I think there's a lot of people that enjoyed it. The whole, each week being in a different sitcom. I think there's a lot of merchandise potential for this show. And like I said, the performances were great. But that's where I stand. I know it was a lot. Guys, take it. What were your thoughts? Would you like? Would you not like? Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
yeah. Basically, I thought it was, like you said, I got some gripes, and well, you kind of expressed roughly all my gripes, that they fell into a number of, issues that we've had with Marvel since day one. To the point that I think it's, I think going into Iron Man 3, was it like the third Iron Man movie? Like walking into that movie, like I turned to you and I was just like, oh my God, I swear if he fights another mirror image of himself, I'll walk out of the theater. Like, and they kind of didn't do it that time, but they dropped the ball with that. But yeah, that is a problem that Marvel has, that, they don't put a lot of thought into their villains oftentimes, it's like, and like you said, a lot of the comic booky tropes that they have are bad, or they don't know how to play those correctly, and it's and it comes off as cheesy, like when the whole family struck a superhero pose, mid-battle. It's like, okay, why did that have to happen? You're unimmersing me here. And just the general lack of motivation on the villain's part. There was as you mentioned, a lack of that. We didn't get. You mentioned before, like we talked before we started a little while ago, about a scene that we both thought was relevant in the same way. When we're in Agatha's mind again, and we're like, we're seeing the scene, where her coven's got her tied to a stake and everything, that we were going to get some greater motivation in that scene of why she's doing this or why she wants this power, but we never get that. Like all of our villains are are empty slates. They seem to be evil or greedy for the sole sake of being so. Like, and that's fine, but you got to show us how they got there. You know, when you watch Black Panther, you know what Killmonger's motivation is for that, and you understand with it, and to a degree, you know, you can empathize with that, and you don't have to empathize, but you do have to understand why your villain's coming from where they're coming from. Otherwise, it just feels very empty. Otherwise, other than that, a lot of the fights were neat, even though it was, you know, a person fighting themselves. There were some neat fights. Oh yeah, also another thing we discussed, a problem I had was the fact that a lot of these side characters that are have become audience favorites, you know, like you said, they just like appeared for a second and checked out. You know, we got Darcy, you know, hits the Shield director with her car, and she's like, "Enjoy prison," and I'm thinking to myself, "Enjoy prison? Do you know about the other part of this plot? Because I don't remember seeing you being caught up to speed." Uh,
I
and
did. I did just read an article since you were talking about Darcy. They said that she's signed on to do a lot more MCU stuff. So
Oh, cool, cool. And I
just
hope that's going where I think it's going. I really do. I hope we're going for like an Agents of Atlas, since we have, you know, Jimmy Woo, and I hope we have Agents of Atlas, and I hope Darcy is involved. Like, shove her into that now. Uh, but yeah, you know, those are basically my gripes. Other than that, you know, a lot of it was neat. I do feel the ending was very well done. You know, like you said, we were discussing it earlier, and you know, like it felt like there was a bit of emotional impact, but the problem with the scene that we got, you know, prior to that, like it led me to believe one thing, that it was going to be that there was going to be more of a twist than there actually was, and that fell empty. You know, and I'll talk about that a little later, but I want you to be able to say your piece too, Spencer.
well, I I enjoyed it. Um, and I'll tell you why I didn't. There's parts I didn't like, but I loved cinematographically how it was filmed. I loved the special effects. You know, we talked about budget and how this has felt like movie budget kind of quality, and it's they did a great job. The scene between you know, Agatha and Wanda fighting back and forth, flying around, the whole sequence where she had the signs, what you call them, sigils, you know,
They were
around.
runes.
Yeah,
Runes.
Yeah.
she had the runes around the outside of her reality, and it, you know, kept Agatha from being able to use her. All those like callbacks, those are like normal things that were well done. Uh, you know, the Vision fighting each other. That was a East Coast versus West Coast Avengers thing that, you know, was so great. And that was a legit storyline from East Coast versus West Coast Avengers. And they also talked about how, you know, we've talked about it. The Wonder Man is a character that may come in. That was the East Coast versus West Coast. There's a lot of things in this that led me to believe that it may kind of run that story gambit a little bit. But having Wanda, this whole series to me did a great job showing how powerful she was. And then the second after credit scene showed that she's getting even more powerful. So to have her be that powerful, the only reason to even do that is to do like a House of M event, to basically bring mutants into the MCU as opposed to in the comics where she got rid of them during the Civil War stuff. So this to me is a great way to do that. But my issues were that if there's not, because everybody's talking about the secret 10th episode or whatever, if there isn't one of those, my issue is that this is a standalone sequence. You gave us a great backstory for Wanda. You gave us a great buildup for a new Vision, which was basically old Vision because he gave him his memory and showed him everything. So Vision's going to be back. You got, you know, the kids. You got the speedster and the the sorcerer. You know, Wiccan and it, Speed. You have these characters who they call to them at the end, so they're going to be in there. You give a great backstory with them. Monica Rambeau shows up. You got her backstory. So now you have these characters that you can use in the future. However, I feel like it's a missed opportunity because this would have been a great way to establish the new villain for the next wave of Marvel movies. And I don't feel like they did it. And I feel like they could have, because we've talked about it. You know, Mephisto, Doom, bringing in Reed Richards. Like, there's so many things that they could have just had in for like a 2-minute sequence, and it would have made this 1,000 times better with just one additional scene. And I don't think we're getting it.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And at that, that Vision could have been like the Ultron AI, and we could have gotten Ultron that way. And we still could have that scene where he where he like restores his memories and everything and turns into the Vision. Like, but we could have had, like as he's doing that, Ultron transmits his consciousness somewhere else, because we've seen that he can do that from the movie. So that would have been a great after credits scene to see that Ultron is still around. Like you said, there's a lot of things they really could have done to shake things up, and I understand why some of it was done the way it was. I did like the episode, by the way. It didn't sound like it at all, but I did like the episode. Like for one, I thought when he woke up those memories that like that this would be like another, like, while the end scene where she's undoing her universe is kind of it's a very sad and somber scene. I thought it would have been a great silver lining for, as everything's fading away, for her to find out that the Vision that she's with is the original Vision.
That's right, because she doesn't know. Right?
Yeah, she does.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, we just had him fly off, and that's what I assumed was going to happen when he flew off and said, "I'm Vision," because we didn't see the other Vision leave. So I assumed he flew off, assumed the original colors, and every scene we saw with Vision from there on out, I thought it was the white Vision. So I thought everything was going to fade away while, they're embracing like they did there, but I assumed he would still be there. Like, and I get that they did that, so it's like, oh, we got to explain why Vision's not in Doctor Strange and why we're not using it. It's like, well, you could have done it a better way. You could have had Wanda say, like, look, I love you and all, but I need just a little bit of me time, because I had a serious breakdown where I literally created a safe space. So clearly I need to work some crap out.
Marvel has a habit of doing this. People online have pointed this out, where if a character is overpowered and it'll tip the balance in the upcoming battle, they just sort of leave. Hulk did it. Remember, Hulk disappeared for a while. Thor went away for a while. Captain Marvel was constantly disappearing. And now Vision, you're right, he's just like, I'm Vision. And then he leaves. And you're like, why did you leave? That makes no sense. To me, it's sort of a shitty writing thing. Yeah, I mean, we don't know what to do with them. So it's like when
it's the old Simpsons meme.
Yeah, the Simpsons meme.
It's like, I'm leaving now. My home planet needs me.
It's true though. It's 100% true. That was, I agree with you. It was just one of those. I like the back and forth in the discussion they had in that scene. I thought that was really well handled.
Yeah, that was nice. And that was a riddle that the Vision would present to himself in order to trip himself up. Just that bit of self-knowledge that, the ship of Theseus riddle would intrigue the other Vision if he is truly Vision. And it's the sort of thing where it's like, yeah, that was very much in character. The leaving doesn't make sense, because once again, we're going on the assumption that he played him because he is mentally still Vision. Why would actual Vision with memories and those experiences return to him? Why would he leave? Why would he not be concerned about Wanda? Why wouldn't he have any other concern about all this that was going on that involved his personal life, now that he realizes he is who he is?
Like, maybe there was some secret shit he was doing far away, and he's like, "Oh shit! Like, I gotta go deal with this thing.
I left the stove on.
I left the stove. Yeah, it's like I fed Gizmo after midnight.
It's like I forgot to feed Howard the Duck."
But let's talk about Agatha a little more. So
I thought we were going to talk about Howard the Duck now.
I mean, we can't. I mean, I think we'll probably see him really soon.
We could see him. Yes.
Yeah. That'd be so good.
Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, actually, or in the Spider-Man film, even
True.
potentially, because we do know both of those films are going to tie into this series and what's going on with Wanda. But Agatha basically is like, "Hey, this is the Book of the Damned or the Darkhold," um, and in it says that the Scarlet Witch will. It's a prophecy. She'll come one day and she'll bring the end of the world, basically. And you are that person. And the whole time I was just trying to figure out if it was you. It is. I want your power. Now she never says why she wants the power. She's just like, I want the power. That's it. Now at the end, she basically is going to imprison her in that town and just make her someone who lives there as a neighbor, and that way she'll keep tabs on her. Fine. I'm glad they didn't kill her because I do think there's a lot of potential for that character. But yeah, that was a to me that was a huge letdown. We never got any explanation, any in-depth analysis of what Agatha was up to. I think they had plenty of time to do this. You had 9 episodes. You could have dug into that character a little more, or perhaps added a 10th episode, maybe that did so. Um, I think it
Yeah,
was a missed opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah. Agatha's character was, you don't reveal until what, the end of episode 7 who she was.
Yeah.
I think the episode where they did her little intro, which was amazing. And then episode 8, you kind of go into her backstory a little bit. And then episode 9, it was just a battle. Like it didn't establish, like you were griping earlier, it was, they didn't establish why she was doing it. We know, we don't understand the deeper why. We understand that she wanted power, but why? Why did she want that power? Is she evil? Because she didn't feel, it didn't feel evil. It didn't feel like she was this evil character. It felt like a, almost like a trope to make Wanda become the Scarlet Witch, which is okay. Now you created who she is, but why? I got a lot of whys.
We didn't see a motivation. We didn't see like any background with her coven where she felt like she was being held back. Like there's more motivation for Anakin becoming Darth Vader because like we see more personal betrayals there. We see more of him being corrupted by the idea that he's not getting things that he feels he deserves. We didn't get that from Agatha.
That's even poorly written. But you're
and
right. There's
and that's
more.
poorly written, but better written. Like true. Like we didn't get that with Agatha. We didn't even get like a scene of her growing up poor or like an incident where her mother could have solved something, you know, could have solved a problem easily, but they suffered through because she's like Agatha, everything can't be solved with magic, you know, like, and it's not her place to meddle. And Agatha, thought maybe that, well, if she had this power, or if she equaled her mother, then she could solve these things or she could have these things that she's been deprived of. We didn't get any of those motivations, and that's the problem. Like we get Wanda's motivations, we kind of get, the sort of fictional or elseworld visions, like, but we don't really get any of our villains any motivation behind why they do what they do. We didn't get a reveal that Hayward was a Hydra remnant or that he was part of God, I'm forgetting the name, AIM. Yeah, that he's part of AIM or anything. We didn't get any of that. So, yeah, it all felt very empty on that end.
I mean, the best villain, they should have just copied verbatim the best villain from the MCU, Yellow Jacket. So they should have just.
Yeah, they sort of did.
Yeah.
With if Hayward had some kind of armor, then he was just a guy who was like, I want to be bad. There was no depth to him, really. Yeah, I'm like, you had 9 episodes. I mean,
I bet that was the first draft, him uploading his conscience into the Vision, and he's like, now I'm the Vision.
I am
oh,
a powerful being.
I don't want to talk about it a whole lot. I mentioned it briefly, but it does warrant a little more discussion. Ralph Boner. What is there any justification for doing that in terms of bringing that actor in to play the part? Like, I just think was it just there to throw people off? I mean,
Who, Ralph Boner?
yes.
I hope not.
I still think it's Mephisto. That whole sequence felt like still, and we've talked about it before, I don't feel like he was ever Pietro or, from another universe. I feel like that actor would play a great Mephisto, and I think that he is. I do still feel like that whole sequence feels like something Mephisto would do. The whole, playing up where he was a thrall, he was controlled, and everything still feels like a Mephisto story. And this could just be alluding to that without telling us just yet. I still feel, just with the Spider-Man story, the introduction of the Fantastic, that to me just feels like who the villain should be as far as the next, wave for the MCU. It should be him. They've already gone the mystic route. They've already gone, the godly route with. Oh Jesus!
McGruff apparently doesn't like your theory. It's like, but I think there's some merit to it. It's the sort of thing where, because we didn't get this, that is a good way to fill in those blanks that we do have. That, why is Agatha so bad? She works for the literal devil. Here's some actual pieces of her backstory. If we get that, if Mephisto is involved in some way, then it makes sense to why she achieved the level of power she did. Why did she steal that book in the first place? What even tempted her to betray her coven? Because we didn't get a motivation for that, but with Mephisto's involvement and a greater explanation through that, we could get those puzzle pieces. So yeah, there could be something to that.
And I think we will. I think that will happen, but it's disappointing that they didn't give bigger. Like, if you're not a huge fan of comic books, if you didn't know that character ever existed, you wouldn't be able to connect any of those dots, which is probably their intention. They don't want you to connect the dots that early, but to me, it seems to be the only thing that makes sense, and that shouldn't be me having to draw those conclusions. That's my gripe, is that I shouldn't have to start connecting dots this early, and them not helping.
That's the thing. Yeah, there is no. I mean, I could sit here and say Hayward really was a Hydra agent, and the show gives it. Everything was so simplistic in the ending, and it didn't give me anything to work with. And I was just like, yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, and there are ways that you can definitely do that. Like we just got done talking about, in our Snowfall review, that you and I, Brian, we're coming in at season 4, but there's so many context clues that there's a lot of past events that we could just pick up on via those relationships and the way characters interact with each other. And we're really not getting that from this show. So to leave us with nothing but pure speculation, and that's all it is from us. It kind of does the show a disservice, and it's only speculation that exists because of our familiarity with these properties in the comics. So if we didn't have that, if we were just average Joes watching the show, because I discuss this with people at work, like, you don't pick up any of these things. You don't get even the inkling of a hit for motivation, or who some of or who your villains are, or why they're doing it. It's just evil woman cackling at your heroes. That's all it appears to be.
There was a great shot at the end of the final of this episode where Wanda is standing inside the foundation of that house after everything disappears, and we got another shot of, I think it was like 3 or 4 episodes ago, where it shows her coming to Westview and going to that foundation. And to me it was a powerful moment, but it was a missed opportunity, because I thought, why didn't they have the very first shot of the first episode, her walking? You never have to show her face. She goes into this empty foundation, and then static hits the screen. The WandaVision show starts, and then that final shot of her in that foundation. Now, we did get that, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 episodes in of her going there, but to me that was a symbol of her whole character's arc. She came into that. she's never everything's always been taken from her. Destroyed. Her family was taken from her. Her brother was taken from her. She was literally taken by Hydra, and these experiments and different things were done to her. She has all this trauma, and that broke down foundation is a great representation of that. So even things like that, I'm like, I would have edited that differently, or I would have changed that. Um,
I
I
think I
don't
see
know.
what you're.
We watch a lot of shows, and a lot of, to me, the me knowing when a show is great is when I get to the end credits and I say, that's exactly what I would have done, or I don't feel a need to interject my idea of how it should be different. For me, that's the problem with this show. I think I have better ideas now. You know, I'm no writer, but I think I do have better ideas than what they did.
Yeah, yeah, I get what you're saying. Like you could write a better outline than this, and at the very least, a better outline. And absolutely believe it. Like, but and because I get what you're saying here. Like, if we had started the show with with that scene where we get the reveal of why Wanda's doing what she's doing, well, we don't even need that. We just needed her coming to this
I just
town.
wanted her walking into the town, walking to that house, and then cut.
Yeah, I think it would have been a neat to even feed in some sort of just some scenes of her going to that town, trying to adjust for a minute, and having her breakdown. Like yeah, like having her break down on that foundation, and then cutting to the sitcom within the first episode would have been great because you're like, wait a minute, what happened here? Like that was clearly the Avengers follow up, and now we're in the sitcom. Where's that coming from? And then you could have and that would have maybe garnered a little bit more curiosity from some people about what the show is, because I know a lot of people who you know just saw it started with the sitcom and they're like, well, I don't know where this is going to go. Is it just going to be this? I'll wait till it's done to check in. you know so yeah, that may have been a better way to start, or at least with some hint you know to people who weren't 100% sure. I mean, I was sure. I was pretty sure about what the show was going to be. But to those who weren't, that it's like, hey, yeah, this is a Marvel thing. This is going to tie into all the things that you're expecting, and it's a good way. Like you said, it's symmetry in a way to sort of to end where you started. And it just works very neatly.
Well, well, like you said, I had zero issues though with how it started. Although I don't disagree that probably could have been a good way to do it. I didn't feel like it started poorly, but my gripe, like Brian alluded to, and Larry, you said it too. Like, if I feel like it should end differently, that's not to me a knock on the show. But if I have to start connecting dots, if I have to start basically being like, well, if they would have done it this way, I can not be happy with an ending and still be happy with the show, because I'm like, you know what? They at least explain how they got there. There's not really any loose ends. But this, to not have a season 2, because this is supposed to be a standalone series, for to not have anything else going on, I'm like, well, that was bullshit. Like, I have so many issues with it. But I think part of that too is because of my involvement with the comics. I think that there was so much more that could have been done that wasn't. And I can't not look at it in a different way. Like, I can't turn off my comic book knowledge and just be like, you know what? it was good. I have so many gripes with a great show. I love the way they did it. I love the sitcom angle. I love the Modern Family joke. Like, all of it was, to me, well done, well acted, but I wish it would have ended differently.
The Boys does a much better job of taking source material and changing it, and it's still working really well than sometimes what this did particularly. And like you say, people, anyone who's listening, still is like, you guys hated the show. I really did, and I enjoyed all the episodes, but I don't know that I'll ever watch it again. And I think that's I felt like, okay, that was fine. I'm good. Um, that's sort of how I'm left feeling. Um, we did get two end credit scenes, and they both clearly are hinting at what's coming next for the series, or not series, for the MCU, and that being the first Wanda with the book, and she's this was sort of a throwback to the Doctor Strange film because we discovered the way that Stephen Strange was able to gain his knowledge so quickly was whenever he was sleeping or whatever, his astral form was still studying. So he was essentially studying 24/7. He was able to, read the books and study and do all that stuff. She's doing the same thing at the end of the episode. We see Wanda in this, in the middle of nowhere and making tea or whatever, and then yet we see a very disturbing, almost demonic astral form of her studying this book. And so, Wanda studying that book at the end, we hear the voices of her children. So clearly she's trying to figure out how to bring them back. That's the assumption. That's going to play into things going forward. And I think that's going to lead to the multiverse thing happening because in another universe, clearly those two exist. So maybe that's how she's going to bring them in. Do you guys agree that Wanda's studying the book and that she's going to end up destroying the multiverse or shredding it, trying to pull her twins from another reality into this current reality?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think she's going to destroy the multiverse. That will, well, not necessarily the multiverse. She will destroy the world, and it will reform into, as we've all said, a cohesive Marvel universe with X-Men and Deadpool and etc. I very much think that's where we're headed. And she'll do that. She'll likely be. We're gonna get that scenario that you get in these superhero team ups in the comics and in the movies, where likely for the Doctor Strange movie, she will, for part of it, appear to be the villain, I think, and from that we'll get to a point where they eventually meet at a point where they have a shared goal, and and where, like you said, maybe the multiverse is sort of torn asunder, and her and Doctor Strange manage to piece it together, and I think we may be seeing, due to certain events, due to, in the show, we may be seeing her being the focal point for a lot of things that happen in regards to mutants in this universe. The Scarlet Witch. I think her actions are going to be the reason mutants are perceived. Because I've been thinking, and it's the sort of thing this has to be, they have to have an explanation for why people dislike mutants, and that's hard to do in a universe where you start with where you're starting with, Iron Man and Captain America and, all these, as far as they know, most people who have powers and are on Earth, those are heroes, no bad views there. I think her being seen as the Scarlet Witch and doing those Scarlet Witch things, and, and maybe even word of what happened in this town will be the reason why when we have mutants, people will see mutants as a dangerous thing.
Well, that's not an uncommon storyline either. So instead of having, what was his name, Nitro in Civil War, that basically got to be terrified of mutants, I think they're gonna work it as an angle where, like you said, Larry, it's gonna be Wanda that caused that, not Nitro. So I think that, she is going to cause a lot of this, but they're going to make it to where it's Wanda that everybody's terrified of, not Nitro and the other mutants. It's her.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's the direction that they've set up. At least it appears to be the direction they set up. Clearly, they didn't want to set up the Marvel Fox mutants yet because they had the opportunity and they didn't do it. Which is fine. If Kevin Feige wants to go completely fresh, that's fine too. If that's one of the things he wants to do, outside of Hugh Jackman, I think most people would be fine if they recast every single X-Men. I think a lot of people would love to see Hugh Jackman come back at least once, maybe just for the Deadpool movie. That'd be cool, but I don't know. We'll see what they do with that. I personally would like a new Wolverine outside of the Deadpool movie. If they did him in Deadpool, that'd be cool. but you have a little more flexibility with plot holes and everything else with Deadpool. So you could have Hugh Jackman in that. Um, Scrolls. We got Monica Rambeau was very much sidelined this episode. Oddly, she was there, but we get scene with her at the end, and basically an agent's like, "Hey, I want to talk to you. Well, let's go talk." And it's like, "Oh, remember your mom and Captain Marvel, and they're friends with the Skrulls, and yeah, I want you to go hang out with them." Now we know the Secret Invasion is coming. We know I think it's going to be a series on Disney Plus. I'm assuming this is setting that up. Now, whether or not the friend she was referring to was in fact another Skrull, or was it Nick Fury himself, could be either or, because we know Fury has been up in space, and I believe on their space station or whatever. Either way, doesn't matter. I'm not a big Secret Invasion fan at all. I'm not a big fan of any of the Skrull storylines for the last decade and a half. That's my personal take. I really don't care. The fact that they're going in that direction, I'm not that interested in it personally, but I think that's what they're doing. What do you guys think?
I
Yeah.
don't anything you just said. I think it could make it interesting. I think it could be, entertaining television, but I don't know that I care.
Yeah, I think we all got kind of a distaste for Secret Invasion. It was such a bad arc, and like you'd have to be really talented to make that work because it was so boring and kind of dumb. It's like, everybody's a secret troll. You don't know who. It's like, well, it could literally be anybody, and they take on the personalities of whoever it is, and and maybe this person was a troll all along. I don't see how that plot can be interesting if we're doing Secret Invasion. So I hope not. Like, let's just keep them as well, let's keep Skrulls in the capacity that we have them now, and like maybe do a Super Skrull arc at some point. But other than that, well, not arc, but movie or something, where someone's fighting the Super Skrull. Now they have the Fantastic Four back. They could do that, but Secret Invasion, they really need to stay far away from that as possible because it's like it just left a really bad taste in my mouth too. I could not hate that arc more.
Yeah, and it was, and I remember when it happened. We were reading it in real time, picking it up as it was happening, and I was on the message boards and I was reading the reviews. It was not loved.
No.
So I don't know why Marvel was sort of hyping it, like, yeah, we're bringing Secret Invasion, and some people are like, yeah, cool, and I'm like, why? Have any of you actually read it? Because it's not good, and they've really sort of not really known what to do outside of Spider-Woman, which has been the only sort of well done thing within all of that. That's it. And she's not there yet, so I mean, I guess maybe they're going to bring her in. Who owns her? Does Sony own her? Does Marvel own her? I don't know. So unless they bring that in, I really don't care.
Right? Yeah. It's just their least interesting arc. It was done poorly, and it's one of those few things where I
Even
can't
Dark
even.
Reign was better,
Oh, absolutely,
and
yeah.
I didn't love that one.
Well, I think the problem is, like, even with a lot of these arcs, we typically talk about them and we say, well, wouldn't it be better if they did this or if they used this character? For Secret Invasion, there are very few ways to do that good.
I was like, wouldn't it be better if this didn't happen?
Yeah, that was our thing. Like, it would be best if this never happened.
Well, like you just mentioned, you didn't know who they said they were. It just reminded me of the awful run of Cap that they did, where Cap was suddenly a secret Hydra agent this whole time. I don't like that. It, to me, discredits all the previous work that all these writers did to create these characters the way they were. So when if they do Secret Invasion and they basically make it to where, I don't know, you could pick anybody, but Nick Fury was one this whole time. I'm like, well, that's stupid, because now you just discredited all these storylines where Nick was trying to do all these things for S.H.I.E.L.D., but he never really was. And that's a way to rewrite a universe in the shittiest, most cop-out way possible.
Really, yeah, absolutely, and it is an excuse, and that is my concern too. That it's an excuse for lazy writing, and that it really would take this in just an incredibly lazy direction, where it's like, well, that plot hole doesn't exist because so and so's a Skrull, and that's what they used it for in the comics. Like, oh no, this does make sense because he was a Skrull. That's why that guy acted weird. You know, that's why this character is out of character. This is how he's in San Francisco and New York at the same time.
Yeah,
You know,
that's exactly what they did.
and I don't want to see that kind of laziness in the movies or the shows. And it could make for, and it could also create an issue with other writers. When you're bringing in other writers to write new properties or other issues, because now they're creating plot holes because they're not following the whole Skrull thing and who is a Skrull and who isn't. When you're like, wait a minute, Ant-Man didn't do that. Like, no, he did. And it's like, no, that was a Skrull. That was established in the latest movie that Ant-Man was never there. He was a Skrull, so you can't use him for this. And I'd hate to see that the level of plot holes this could create. Not to mention that, like we said, it's a bad story to follow.
Yeah, it's going to be like I said, a series on Disney Plus. Like I said, this clearly to me was leading into that. Perhaps the Miss Marvel show might touch on it a little bit. We know Captain Marvel, I think, is going to be in that show, and Monica Rambeau, I think, has also been confirmed. So my guess is that the Miss Marvel series will be the next piece to this puzzle, and then that will potentially lead into the Secret Invasion. I'm just assuming, and then Captain Marvel is going to get her own sequel. She's going to get a sequel. Where that plays in all this, I don't know. I don't even know if that'll be on Earth, to be honest, since she never typically likes to be there. Um,
clearly they've established that.
The scene where one of my favorite scenes in this episode was a scene that went out of its way to sort of show that Wanda was, in many ways, was the villain this season, and that being when Agatha released all of the town folks of Westview, and they're begging her. Dottie's like, I want to. Oh, can I see my daughter? And the guy's like exhausted. He hasn't slept, and they're like, when we do sleep, we see your nightmares. And then one person is just like, well, if you're not going to free us, could you please kill me? Like, I mean, it gets really dark, and Wanda's like horrified by it, but she's been torturing these people, literally. And to me, it was a well done scene. I think it was deflated a little bit at the end with her conversation with Monica, where Monica was sort of justifying her actions a little bit. I didn't like that, but I don't know. Wanda was the villain, even though she didn't completely realize everything she was doing. She didn't completely understand it. She was doing bad things, and she is dangerous. And Larry, we had a conversation, and I think you're 100% right. If they know what they're doing, they'll do this. Certain people that are in that town would be great to join corporations and or government to put a restriction on superheroes and or mutants, because they were traumatized by one, and they have justification for being afraid of them and wanting them locked down, basically. So I think that hopefully that is a storyline that comes out of this.
Yeah, definitely. And like I was thinking of specifically people like, we saw, what was the neighbor? Herb was his name, and yeah, like him, and then there's Vision's coworker, who what, like in the latest iteration of the show, like they're programmers and whatnot. So like, who better to have developed that Sentinel AI, the Master Mold or what have you, to have him do that, and have some of them go into politics and whatnot and be like your Senator Kellys and whatnot in this situation. It could really, like, we could have established a lot of X-Men villains here and now in this town, and there's a justification for that super radical, insane hatred of mutants that you see in the comics if it roots from this. So yeah, this could be a neat origins for those villains and for those adversaries that the X-Men have.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be. I just don't know. It like the end sequence where it showed Wanda kind of reflecting on everything that happened. I was like, okay, that's great. It's showing that she was conflicted about everything that happened. It showed that she was upset that she was essentially the villain. I was like, okay, I get it. That's great. But I just don't know that there was a scene where I told Brian, I was like, all right, there's two post-credit scenes. I told Brian and Larry because I watched it and I was like, I didn't want him to miss one of them because I wasn't expecting the second one. But at the end of the scene where Wanda's face like lights up red, but it's almost like a flash that goes by when she hears her kid saying, Mom. I was like, okay, was that Mephisto? And I watched it probably 15 times. Like I rewound it. I tried to pause it, tried to see if you guys have seen The Exorcist, right? The director's cut where it blacks in and out and you keep seeing like the demon faces or whatever. I was thinking, okay, maybe it's something like that. Maybe I missed something. I paused it like 30 times and I'm like, all right, well, that was nothing. It was so my gripe becomes once again, it just so many things that they led us to ended up not mattering. And I think they are going to matter, but I'm just upset now that I'm gonna have to wait. So I don't
Years.
know that it was poor writing, but I think that now that I'm gonna have to wait a very long time for an answer, I'm not gonna have to wait for season 2. I'm gonna have to wait for whenever the fuck they decide to put the movies out, which is, years from now.
Strange won't come out until March of 2022.
Oh, well, at least a year then.
Well, about a year, yeah.
Whoa.
Boo.
Yeah, I didn't think it would be that long. Good Lord.
But I also feel like that's a missed opportunity too, because now you have a show that was, to me, and we've talked about it this whole time, it is a perfect way to give backstory. It's a perfect way to set up these characters without having to do an origin movie. But now you're going to have to spend the first 20 minutes of the Doctor Strange movie if you want to tie him in, explaining how he's tied in. So now you're wasting part of a movie to tie into a show that maybe not everybody has seen. So it's bullshit. Sorry.
Yeah.
No.
I would say again.
The more I think about it.
Well, it's like, I'm trying to think. We're pretty hard on a lot of shows in the finale, which I'm completely okay with. But when we love it, we love it. Your Honor was a great ending. Perry Mason, we praised the ending of Perry Mason. 30 Coins, we were very high on 30 Coins. So there are shows that we watch and we get to that finale and we're like, damn, that was well done. And then you get shows like Lovecraft Country. I had issues with that finale. I have issues with this finale. Had a few issues with the Undoings finale. I thought it was pretty decent, but there, had a few little gripes with it. But this is one, like you said, Spencer, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, well, why didn't they do that? Or what, why couldn't they have done this? So I don't know. As time goes on, I think it's just going to be a show. I'll just be like, yeah, it was fine, and I'll go about my life. But yeah. Anything else you guys want to talk about regarding this show?
No, I think that's enough. I'm personally good, unless Larry picks up something that reminds me of something else that pisses me off.
Oh no, that was it. Yeah, I think that we pretty much covered everything I want to say about this show. Like, other than, again, enjoyed the series as a whole, but like you said, the fact that they could have, there's more they could have done is all we're saying, or there was a better way to go about a lot of this, and the ending feels a little more shallow than it could have been, but I think we've said it all.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, we'll be doing Falcon and Winter Soldier, which I want to say is it's either next week or the week after, but whenever it hits, we'll be doing that. I believe it's going to be 6 episodes, and they're going to be supposedly closer to the hour mark. The way it's going to be structured, maybe not. They told us all kind of stuff about how WandaVision was going to be structured, and it was not always accurate. So we'll see. But yeah, definitely check that out, and yeah, we appreciate everyone listening.
Well, bye.
Bye.